Hello everyone, my name is Li Hao, and today I'm going to show you an interactive demo which we are going to see how we are going to recreate it. Just this morning I saw this tweet by Kirill showing interactive example on explaining how Fibonacci works. In his article, he explained how Fibonacci occurs in nature. At the very bottom, he shows an interactive demo which demonstrates that how dots are created at a certain angle apart will create a certain spiral patterns. So in this example, if you put in 0.012345, which means that each dots are this amount of angle apart, or this amount of turns apart, then you create this pattern. So a few characteristics of this number will be, we pass in something like 1, which means that every dot are 1 turns apart. So you end up having a straight line because every new dots are created 1 turn apart. If you pass in something like 0.5, then dots will create on either side of the line because half turn will be on here and another half turn will be at the right side. Right? This will be what you are going to see. If you pass in something like 0.25, then dots will be created every a quarter turn. Then you end up with a cross-like pattern. And if you pass in a golden ratio 0.618, then you'll get a very nice spiral-ish pattern, which very alike the seeds pattern in sunflower as well as pine nuts. And that is what the golden ratio or the Fibonacci number is, because in Fibonacci, subsequent numbers, if you divide subsequent numbers, you get close to enough this ratio. Right. So I was looking at this demo and I was thinking about whether I can recreate it on Svelte. That's what we are going to do today. So here we go. We are going to reproduce this in a REPL. So let me remove any unnecessary text. Over here, I'm going to create a very basic setup first, which is to have a div and then have an input. And it will be a type of number. And I'm going to bind this number as, bind value as angle. So I'm going to define this variable angle. And the default value will be 0. And another thing I'm going to have is a button. And it's going to have play. Okay. So next thing is that I need to create this pattern. So I'm more familiar with SVG, so I'm going to create SVG with it. So what I'm going to have is that I will have to loop through a number, and then as I loop through it, I'm going to create a SVG circle in it. Right, so each of the dots will be represented by one circle. Right, so over here, I'm estimating that there will be, say, 200 elements, right? So that will be, say, length 200. I'm going to create 200 dots on the screen, right? But at the same time, we want to animate this, right? We'll leave that animation later on, but let's take a look at how we can create this dots over here. So the dots will probably maybe have a radius of, say, 3, and this will be the X and Y position of the center of the circle. So right now I'm going to put in as, say, 0. And immediately you can see that the circle is being painted on here at the very top left of the SVG. Right, so SVG coordinate starts from the top left and it goes to right. So on the x-axis and go to the bottom for the y-axis. So I want to use 0, 0 as as an origin, because it's easier for me to calculate the position next. But then I want that 0, 0 position to be at the very center of the SVG. Right, so I can use a transform for each of the circle. So something like a transform over here. Of course, I can do the same thing as instead of having transform in a circle, I can group all the circle together using a group and then I'm gonna add a transform to this group of elements. Transform. So let me define like maybe a height and a width of the SVG so that we know where we want to transform. So let's say height and width is 500 pixels, then my transformation will be just moving the center 0, 0 to half of the height and half of the width, which is 250 and 250. Right, so 500 is probably somewhere a very big canvas. Yeah, let's see. Maybe probably let me define it a smaller number so that we can fit it on the screen. Say 200 and 200, and this would be 100. Right, probably like I think this size is good enough for now. So as we create the circles, we're going to keep the index, and we are going to calculate the position of the circle based on the index. Right, so this is where we need to refresh our trigonometry. Right, so I'm going to paint the circle. So the position of the circle will be based on the index, and so the angle of that circle relative to, say, the very beginning would be index times. So let me add some comment over here. So the angle will be equals to index times the angle value, right? So okay, so probably this is like angle for circle will be index times angle, right? Because each circle will be this angle apart, and based on your index, you'll be index times angle apart from the original position. And so this will be the angle. And then let's recall our trigonometry. Here is like a basic formula that I found on Google. So the x position or x coordinate will be the cos of the angle times the distance that from that point, right? So we are going to have a fixed distance for each of the points, and the x position will be the cos of the angle times the distance, and the y coordinate will be the sine of the angle times that distance. So x will be the cos of angle times the distance, and y would be the sine of that angle times the distance, right? Probably distance based on the index, right? Probably I'm gonna say index times maybe 0.3 or 0.2, right? So it's like a fixed ratio of the index, because index goes from 1 to 200, and this SVG width is also like 200 to 200. Probably want to fit like not going too far to the edge, because from the center to one of the side will be 100 pixels. So I'm just gonna randomly pick some numbers that is within 0.5, and I pick 0.2 for not much reasons. It's just that I feel this is a good number. Probably will tune that later. So the distance is based on the index, and the x and y position will based on the angle and cos. So one thing we haven't talked about here is that this value, which is the variable angle, is actually how many turns, right? So if it's 1, it's actually 1 turn, which is 360 degree. So I'm gonna times 360, because this will actually create the angle in degree. But over here, the angle that you pass in for cos or sine has to be in radian. So let us find like a degree to radian formula. So 1 degree times pi over 180 would be the number of radian. So radian would be angle in radian would be the angle times pi divided by 180. Right, so we are going to combine all this, collapse all this formula into the calculation of CX, the center X position and center Y. So over here, this will be, let's say, math dot cos of the angle in for the circle, which is the radian. So this angle will be 100 index times angles times 360, and then times math pi divided by 180. Probably I can, this 360 divided by 180 will be 2, so I'm going to replace this with times 2. And so we get this, I'm going to times the distance, which is the index times 0.2. Right? And I'm going to copy this over here. This will be just different as I'm going to swap the cos to sine. Right? So if I switch this to, say, 0.618, there you go, this pattern will emerges, right? Basically we got pretty much of this pattern now. I think the size of it is okay. Probably you can tune that later. But this is amazing. So the next thing we're gonna look at is actually the color. So usually when I try to inspect a website and want to get the color of it, I use various tools, but one of it I find it simple enough is the digital color meter from Mac. So it's built-in software, so I can find that what color I'm gonna pick. So over here, probably this, the basic color will be 35B1BB. 35B1BB. So 35B1BB. And the next color, which is the final color, would be something around FE02D2. 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 Right, so I have these two color, and probably I'm gonna interpolate them from the first index of 0 all the way to index of 200. Right, so how I'm gonna do that? Probably I'm gonna use something called D3 interpolate. So D3 interpolate is a library from D3 that contains all the function, allows you to interpolate between two values, right? So for example, you want to interpolate between 0 to 10. It returns a function that takes in a value of 0 to 1. So 0 will be at the beginning value, and then 1 will be returning a ending value, and anything between you will return a value in between, right? So this library provides all the different functions such as interpolate round, interpolate string, interpolate date, array, and all this stuff, right? And the thing that we are looking for is interpolate HSL, which interpolates color in the color space of HSL. So here I'm going to import interpolate HSL from D3 interpolate. I'm going to create that color function. I'm going to pass in these two color. Sorry. Here and over here. And this will be a function, and I'm going to call this function with I'm going to use fill, and the fill color will be based on the color, and this value will be based on the index divided by the length, right, which is 200. You can see now the points with color and interpolate nicely in between. So I replace this as 618. Now you can see this very nice colorful spiral patterns emerge, which is pretty much similar to this, except that the distance between point wasn't that much. So that is because of the 0.2 that we set previously, right? So let's try 0.3. Sorry, 0.618. Feels better now, right? So we can tune this as our liking. I think this value for this size of for the size of the dots and the size of the SVG, I think this distance is good enough. So the next thing is that we need to play the animation of creating the dots, right? So we can actually tune like the value of, say, the length starting from 0 all the way to 200, then we'll get that animation. If you don't get what I'm trying to say, take a look at here. If I have a range and then bind value equals to count, min is equals to 0 and max is 200. Okay, so let me declare a variable called count. So if I have this, okay, probably let me default angle will be 0.618. Okay, so if I have this range slider starting from what? Hold on. Okay, I need to replace this as count. So if I start with 0, then there's no dots. And if I add more and more, if I slide the number all the way to 200, then you'll see more dots on the screen, right? So what we need to do now is just to animate the count value from 0 all the way to 200 and probably back to 0 if you want, right? So the play will allows us to animate the value from 0 all the way to 200. And actually Svelte has a library that does that, which is called tweened from Svelte Motion. So tweened will create a star for you, and the value is 0. And then, okay, probably not gonna use this variable. I'm gonna create a new tweened count. So tweened is a function that creates a star. So this is the initial value, and you can provide options such as duration to say how long it takes to tween from 0 to another value that you want. So duration, I'll probably put in like, say, 1 second, right? So if let's look at the screen. Okay, so to use it, it's a star, so I use a $sign to get the value. So if I click play, I want to set the value of this tween count equals to, say, 200, right? Then take a look at here. So I click on it, it will tween all the way to 200, right? Except that if you notice just now, okay, so let me change this first. Tween count greater than 0, then it will be 0, so that it will set back to 0 if it's a value greater than 0, and then if it's 0, then it will go all the way to 200, right? So it's kind of go up and go down. But if you look at this number it's a floating number, which is like number with decimal points, and that does not work well with length, right? We wouldn't want a decimal point in the length, right? We want a fixed number. So what we can do here is that we can pass in an interpolate function. And interpolate function, we can pass in actually what we call interpolate round over here. This will return a value that is being rounded. So it will remove the floating point. So I'm gonna pass this in here. Sorry. Oh, I need to import this. And as you can see here, the number is increase and decrease in not floating point number anymore, right? So if you don't want to use D3 interpolate just because you want to use this variable, actually this is a function that you can write yourself. So another way of writing it would be, so this will be a function that takes in A and B. A is the starting point, B is the ending point, and it returns another function, T. T will be a value from 0 to 1, which if it's 0, you should return A, and if it's 1, you should return B, and anything in between, you should return any value that in between A and B, depending on how you want to interpolate, right? So this would be, so now we are going to calculate what is the value that we want to return. So we can calculate maybe the distance between B and A times t. So this will give me a value distance that I want from A. And I'm going to add that to A. And lastly, I'm going to round this value. So this way, we're getting the same thing as well, the same effect. Right, so now we're going to replace this tween count with the length. Right, so if you click play over here, see now we have our animation, right, which is amazing. Let me remove anything that we don't need for now. And you click play again. Amazing. If you want more number, we're gonna change this value to say 500. That we have 500 dots on the screen now. Let's see. Looks perfect. That's amazing. And here you have it, a Fibonacci interactive demo from Kirill. Full credit for him to design this interactive example. I'm just trying to rebuild this to see how we are going to build this on our own. And if you spot any mistakes that I've made, or you have any suggestion that I can improve on, please feel free to comment down below. And also tell me anything that you would like to see me building. Feel free to comment that as well. I will try to make that in my next video. So thank you. See you next time. So thank you for staying till the end. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to stay notified with my next video, please hit the subscribe button down below. As always, stay safe and well. See you next time.